What is going on, Pats Nation? It's Patriots Global here, back with another video, and in this one, we're going to be talking about could the Patriots potentially trade for the Cleveland Browns wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. or Allen Robinson from the Chicago Bears. Of course, these rumors have been circling around like crazy over the past few weeks, not just specifically for the New England Patriots, but just for the NFL in general for these two specific guys. Are either of these guys going to be traded? Are they going to be moved? Allen Robinson, I would say, is the more notable one out of the two, but we'll get into each of these specifically. As I'm sure we all know by now, last season the New England Patriots were drowning in the help for a big playmaker, especially at the receiver position. Whether that was wide receiver or tight end, they just desperately needed a guy at that next threat level. Things really have not necessarily changed in that aspect. They have Cam Newton, who definitely changes the Patriots game scheme, who really opens up the playbook and helps them move the chains a lot better than I would say we did in this situation with Tom Brady. But I wouldn't say that that factor of needing help at wide receiver, needing help at tight end, and ultimately needing a top-level pass catcher to go along with somebody like Julian Edelman, N'Keal Harry, that aspect has not changed. To start off with Odell Beckham Jr., this has been something that has been involved with the New England Patriots for years. I mean, before he was traded to the Cleveland Browns, I believe it was the year prior to him being traded to the Browns, he was literally a hair away from being traded to the New England Patriots. And when I say hair, I mean an actual hair. I mean, the trade was about to go through. They already had, the contract negotiations going through, and then just last minute, the New York Giants pulled out. Why exactly they pulled out, we don't know. Maybe they realized if Bill Belichick sees something in Odell, maybe there's something we're missing. Either way, they traded him the following year after signing him to a large contract, and they ended up trading him to the Browns and not the Patriots. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised Odell Beckham Jr. has not complained more about wanting to be released, wanting to move on from the Cleveland Browns. And I think that that shows just the maturity of him. I think that a lot of people think that he's very immature, but I think it shows the maturity when he is not getting good looks. I don't think that they are using him and he's not being valued the way that his talent level has dictated him in the past. For whatever reason it might be, Baker Mayfield and Odell just aren't clicking. It seems like everything within the Browns organization just never seems to click. It seems like Baker Mayfield just isn't doing too well with the Browns. Everyone in general, even Austin Hooper, not putting up great stats in his first year with the team. So I wouldn't say it's Odell. I would say it's more so, the scheme fit and the coaching, just the atmosphere in Cleveland. But either way, he went from being a top guy, a top receiver in this league with the Giants, to just being some other guy that really nobody talks about anymore. He's not a top tight end or top 10 wide receiver in the league anymore. And again, I don't think that comes down to talent. I think that that comes down to him being in Cleveland and how they're utilizing him. The Patriots have a very new look to their offense this year, and I think even last year with Odell, it would have fit very well. But even now, I think that it could work even better. Not just because Cam Newton is the quarterback, but just with the new look offense that the New England Patriots have. But then you put in the fact that Cam Newton is the Patriots quarterback. Beckham and Newton have a very good connection off the field. And if you have a good connection off the field, then that usually does translate to having a good connection on the field. Let's also remember that they work out constantly together. They worked out all offseason together. So they are very familiar with each other, not just off the field on a personal level, but also being able to have that connection on the field, although they've never actually been able to do that on an NFL level. Now, when we talk about Odell, when we talk about Allen Robinson, it's the same thing either way. I think the Patriots are one top-tier guy away from this offense just taking that big leap forward that I think they really need. We have Julian Edelman, who is obviously the Patriots' number one wide receiver, but he's already getting a little bit banged up. If he has any more issues, then that is going to bring a whole lot of concern. You have N'Keal Harry, who's doing better, but obviously is still not, that number one overall pick. That talent has just not necessarily been there just yet. I think it will click at some point, just has not just yet. But outside of those two guys, there really is not anyone. Damiere Byrd's not showing much. We haven't seen anything from Gunnar Olszewski because he's been on injured reserve. Jakobi Meyers is MIA. And because of that, the Patriots passing game has not really been able to do too much. What they were able to do week 2 pretty much solely came from Julian Edelman. Now, Damiere Byrd and N'Keal Harry did have some pretty good games, eclipsing 70 yards, but still, the majority of those receiving yards came from Julian Edelman. Against the Dolphins, the air show consisted of pretty much just 10-yard hitches down the field, whether it was crossers or slants, and out of the 19 pass attempts that Cam Newton threw downfield, he went on 15 passes for 155 yards, and the receivers only accounted for 96 of those 155 yards. I think it's very, very reasonable for Patriots fans to be skeptical and concerned about how this passing game and these receivers are going to do against more top-tier defenses. You know, Seattle Seahawks, Buffalo Bills, San Francisco 49ers, the Los Angeles Rams. The Patriots were able to get their passing game going against Seattle, but that is a very, very shot-up secondary. How are these guys going to perform when we have to play the Los Angeles Rams, the San Francisco 49ers, the Buffalo Bills? If you bring in a guy like Odell Beckham Jr., he's someone that obviously has to gain some attention. He's not a Damiere Byrd. He's not a Gunnar Olszewski, which I can't really say too much about because we haven't seen him just yet. He's not a Jakobi Meyers, who you can just place a corner on, you know, above average to average, and pretty much shut them down. You know, you can't have one-on-one with Odell Beckham Jr., one-on-one with Julian Edelman. Obviously, if we bring in a more top-tier guy, that will help these other receivers, these tight ends, the running backs out of the backfield, get much more open, which I think, again, opens up this offense completely, which is what the Patriots need, and which is why I said just one elite guy away from, I think, this offense taking that big leap forward that they need. Now, last year in 2019 with the Cleveland Browns, he was able to eclipse 1,035 yards when he appeared in all 16 games with 4 touchdowns. But when you are looking at the past Odell Beckham Jr., that's pretty low. I mean, with the Giants in 2018, he appeared in just 12 games, and he still had 1,052 yards, more than he had when he played the entire season with the Cleveland Browns and had 6 touchdowns that season also. Even in 2014, in his rookie season when he appeared in just 12 games, 1,305 yards and 12 touchdowns. You clearly can see that Odell Beckham Jr. sadly did take a hit to his stats. Me personally, I think that Odell Beckham Jr. would be the better fit. Personally, I prefer to go the route of Odell Beckham Jr. because he has that connection with Cam Newton already versus Allen Robinson. We're already in, week 4 now, I believe, of the NFL season, so things are already getting underway. You need a guy who knows what to expect, who knows what to do, and obviously those two will already be on the same page. And you also have the fact that Odell Beckham Jr. is signed under contract until 2024. As for Allen Robinson, which we'll be talking about next, he is a receiver who's pretty much just a rental for the New England Patriots because at the end of the season, he's a free agent. Now, of course, Odell Beckham Jr. did sign a pretty large contract there with the Giants before he was traded to the Cleveland Browns. He's making an average annual salary of around $18 million. His cap hit does fluctuate, though, over the final courses of the last final years of his deal between $14 and $15 million. Obviously, that is a substantial amount. Usually, the New England Patriots do not like to have a receiver, or really a player for that fact, who is taking up that much money. But they did try to trade for Odell Beckham Jr. at one point prior. Could they do it again if they really feel that he's that final missing piece, which I really think that, again, one elite receiver being away from this offense opening up, maybe they make that final push. It's also, a factor that if things don't work out, they could always pull a Brandon Cooks trade where maybe they put him in for a year or two, and then in the last maybe 1 to 2 years of his contract, they end up trading him. Now, guys, before we get into Allen Robinson, as we all know, the wait for football is finally over. Football is finally back, heading into week 4 of the NFL. The sad part being, though, is that things are different this year. You know, we can't be at the games. I feel that a lot of people feel that there's not much to do with football. The energy is a little low, but you can get in with all of the action still with BetOnline. Now, BetOnline is going that extra mile to make sure that you get in on everything imaginable for this upcoming season. All the way from game spreads and totals to team, player, and coaching props, BetOnline gives you more options to wager than any place online. Now, you can get in on their season opening bonuses today and start off wagering on win, division, and championship futures today. All you got to do is head to BetOnline today and take advantage of all of their great sign-up bonuses. Again, that is BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Now, as for Allen Robinson, another intriguing aspect here, you know, could this be a trade that Chicago pulls off? Is it something that they're like, I'm not really looking to do that? He does bring something that Odell Beckham Jr. does not have, though, and I would say that is height. You know, Allen Robinson would bring something that the New England Patriots don't really have outside of pretty much just N'Keal Harry. Of course, they do have their tight ends, but the tight ends really have not been a factor over the course of about 3 weeks that we have seen in the NFL so far. He's a guy that could play on the outside and be that big target on the outside, the outskirts, that I think could really be beneficial for Cam Newton, something that the Patriots, again, don't really have outside of N'Keal Harry, sitting at 6'2", 220 pounds. This one definitely has some more interesting legs to it than Odell Beckham Jr., which is more so speculation. And, you know, we are all saying like, okay, maybe the Patriots could make this potential trade. But Allen Robinson actually deleted all Bears content from his Instagram. Of course, rumors and everything right after that were speculating. He definitely wants a contract extension. He is upset with where things are going with that and kind of how he's being treated in Chicago. But he did say, you know, after all these trade rumors that he does want to stay with Chicago. Now, is he just saying that to the media to look like a good person for the franchise, the fans, whatnot? Or is that how he actually feels? Only he knows. But Robinson, after deleting everything, posted on Twitter saying, and I quote, "Trying to keep it peaceful is a struggle for me." And then former Patriots kick returner Cordero Patterson responded, extend at Chicago Bears. I think also what, you know, Allen Robinson has that is a little bit different than Odell Beckham Jr. is that contested catch ability. Now, we do have that with N'Keal Harry, but I wouldn't say that right now N'Keal Harry is as developed in that aspect. He's not as developed in the NFL right now with hands and just going up against NFL defenses or whatnot than Allen Robinson is. Allen Robinson had 26 contested catches in 2019, and that was the most out of any other player that year. I guarantee you that if Allen Robinson was on the Patriots, Belichick would use that ability as a weapon. Cam Newton would use that ability as a weapon, being able to just launch the ball downfield and being able to have a player who is able to really pull in those 50-50 balls the majority of the time. Now, from the contract aspect of this, like I said, he's in his final year. So this wouldn't be a situation where with Odell Beckham Jr., if the Patriots did make the trade, they'd have him for multiple years. The Patriots would essentially just be having a rental before he goes on to become a free agent at the end of the season, which of course wouldn't be the most ideal situation. But Allen Robinson does have a $10.9 million in base salary for this season, but that does decrease each game that he does play in Chicago, and he's already played in about 3-4 games with Chicago. So pretty affordable for the New England Patriots. Obviously, for that 1 year, it would be less money than they would be having if they made the trade for Odell. Over the course of 3 games, Allen Robinson has been very productive here despite having Mitchell Trubisky as a quarterback. Week 1 against the Detroit Lions, he was targeted 9 times with 5 receptions for 74 yards. Week 2 against the New York Giants, he also had 9 targets, but for 3 receptions for 33 yards. And then against Atlanta, he was targeted 13 times with 10 receptions for 123 yards and a touchdown. He's a guy that it seems like coming to Chicago, or ever since he did come to Chicago, has put up pretty good numbers and kind of took that extra step in his career. He actually was formerly with the Jacksonville Jags from 2014 up until about 2017. He put up some pretty respectable numbers for them in 2015. In his second year with the Jags, he put up 1,400 yards. 2016, 883. And then going with Chicago, 2018, he had 754 yards. In 2019, 1,147. So obviously, a guy that is an elite receiver, can take this New England Patriots offense to that next level, and 100% fills that category of an elite wide receiver. These are just two targets that the New England Patriots could potentially look at right before the trade deadline. As we all know, we are now in October. The trade deadline ends in October, so we have a few weeks left if the New England Patriots want to make a final trade. This is usually the time where rumors start to swirl around, guys, so expect some things to pick up around the NFL within the next few weeks about rumors for guys potentially making trades, rumors that the New England Patriots could be interested in making a trade for a guy. So, like always, though, I will keep you covered on all of the rumors, the news for the New England Patriots. So if you want to know more about them, go ahead and check out the rest of my channel and subscribe and turn on those notifications so you know when I post a video. Like always, though, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.